Hey everybody, Fish here again. Um, kind of late this week with the video. Sorry about that. Had a lot of stuff going on. Doctor's appointments for both myself and the wife. So it's been kind of a hectic week. In fact, in a couple hours here, I'll be going to the doctor's again down at the VA for an annual checkup type thing. Okay, last week I said that this week we'd be talking about some of my experiences with borderline personality disorder and how I deal with it. Well, one of the root things they say that causes borderline personality disorder is some kind of trauma when you're younger. And the only thing in my life that really could probably be the cause of that, the underlying cause, would be my parents splitting up back when I was 10 years old. When I was 8, we moved to Ohio because my dad's job with Massey Ferguson moved down there and he had to go with them, so we moved down there. When I was 10, my father ended up splitting from my mother and taking off with their neighbor's wife. And today she's my stepmother. But I think that's probably my main thing because of the abandonment issues. When my father left, it was really devastating. And then I had to live with my mother, who had already had one failed marriage, and this marriage made her very bitter. She spent many years trying to poison me against my father, which never worked because I knew my dad and I knew how he felt about me and how he treated me. But that's, one of the main things that happened in my life was that act of my father leaving. It was devastating. And then having to deal with a woman who was bitter over 2 marriages. It was one of the root causes for me getting into alcoholism and drug addiction, trying to deal with my problems, medicate. Unfortunately, when I did that, it ended up being for years. By the time I was late 13, 14-year-old, I was already drinking quite a bit and on my way to becoming an alcoholic. By the time I was 15, I was already into drugs. And actually, my first encounter with drugs was with my cousin when I was about 11 or 12. He turned me on to mescaline. But that was only the first interaction, and it took a couple years later till I started getting into other things. But it ended up being a huge thing because from that time on until I was 21 and joined the Navy, I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and even throughout my time in the Navy and afterwards, I was an alcoholic up until I got saved and became a born again Christian 16 years ago. So I spent like well over 30 years being an alcoholic and a drug addict because of the things that I was trying to escape from. And part of my borderline personality disorder is dealing with all those formative years that you learn how to become an adult and deal with life. I was checked out. I was in la la land all the time. My life from the time I got up until I went to bed was how can I get high and how can I get drunk. And I never, my emotions never grew the way they should have until I went in the Navy at 21, and that ended up making me grow up, which was a great thing. It was the best job I ever had. And I really loved it. I wanted to be a lifer, but I gained some weight in the Navy and they wouldn't let me re-enlist, so I got out and then I had to start dealing with life again. And I hadn't grown the tools in the emotional area that I needed to deal with life through all those formative years. I was checked out high and drunk, and I never developed those skills. So growing up as an adult, you know, from a young age to now has been an experience. And it's been very hard, especially having this condition, borderline personality disorder, and on top of that I have multiple sclerosis, I have severe arthritis, and then, that all plays in with the BPD stuff, with getting angry about dealing with these life problems. But, since I've been going to counseling, it's been a wonderful thing. And I told you in one of my other videos that my counselor gave me this sheet, that at the core of the sheet there's a guy who's angry, and then there's all these lines that go out to other emotions, and there's like about 15 different emotions. Um, Frustration, worry, guilt, shame, um, disappointment. In my next video, I'll pull out a picture of that and I'll show it to you, because it's really been helping me to learn how to figure out what my true emotion is when I get to that BPD anger thing. I'm learning how to, instead of just blowing up, to stop and think, what am I really feeling here? What is my true emotion that's coming through? And I'll give you an example I just went through about a month ago. With my back issues, I can't sleep in a bed very well, so I've been sleeping in our 2 million-year-old recliner that's just wore out. So my wife ended up getting some money from our insurance, and we bought a new recliner for me. And it came, and 10 minutes after they left from delivering it, it broke. And I spent the last month trying to get this company to fix this chair, and it finally got fixed last week, so I'm happy. But normally with my borderline personality disorder, when something like that happens where the chair broke, I would have exploded. I would have been cussing out the people. I would have been cussing at God, asking, why did you let this happen when this is so important to me? And of course, I would have regretted all that after it happens, because that's always what happens when I go through a meltdown. Whoever it is, my wife or God, I'm begging for forgiveness. But I would have exploded, and I sat there for a minute in the chair after it broke, and I heard this horrible snapping sound. And I thought, what am I really feeling here? And I figured out that it was just a huge disappointment. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment that I had waited so long for this chair. I finally got it, and 10 minutes after I got it, it broke, and I was so disappointed. And I walked downstairs, and I said to my wife, Patty, I said, Patty, I just want to cry. Because that was my true emotion. I was so disappointed. And that's what this sheet is showing me. I got it posted right next to where I sit, so I can see it every day, so it's a reminder. And my next video, I'll show you, and I'll try to find a link where you can get it, because my wife found it online. Because it can help. It can really help when you start thinking about what the actual motion that you're feeling underneath your underlying your anger response, that is just the default for people with borderline disability, or borderline personality disorder, I'm sorry. But it's really been helping me to deal with it. So in my next video, I'll posted a picture of that, and I'll try to get the link where I find it, and let you know what that is too, so that you can go and download it and put it near you like I do, which will help you start dealing with actually discovering what the underlying emotion is to your anger. But it's a hard thing to deal with. And again, I'm going to say this 100 times during these videos. If you're suffering from BPD, you need to get some counseling, because you can't fix it on your own. Now, I showed you this book in my last video, Borderline Personality Disorder, A Scriptural Perspective, and it's by Kathy Wiseman, who is a professor at a college in Texas. She's the Christian counselor there at the university. I actually wrote to her and got permission to use stuff out of the book, so I don't get a copyright infringement thing going on. But she's a very, very nice woman, and this is a great book. it'll help you to understand things. There's a whole chapter in here that just gives you these graphs, and it says, like, the headings are this feeling, what the trigger is, what a borderline personality disorder sufferer's reaction is, what their heart demands, which is, what they're actually seeking through this whatever's going on, and the trigger that's causing this feeling, and then what the Bible says about that type of thing. And there's just several pages of these things with different feelings and those reactions and stuff, and it's really good. Again, these videos are mostly aimed at Christians dealing with borderline personality, but anybody can gather good information from this series of videos that I'm posting. I kind of just want to share my life experiences with you so that you know that others are dealing with the same thing you are. And it's kind of like in the military, you have a band of brothers that share the same experiences, which brings them closer and helps them deal with things. This is kind of the same premise I'm thinking of by doing these videos, is sharing with you my experiences, allowing you to share your experiences with me through the comments section and stuff. And in my next video, on my page on YouTube, I'll have my Instagram address, my Twitter address, probably Facebook, maybe even an email address, so we can correspond on a one-to-one basis and just help each other. Well, next week I'll be dealing with some more stuff that I go through and how I deal with it. That's going to be it for this week. I hope y'all have a great week. Talk to somebody. Don't just keep everything inside. Try to find some help, because it really is a good thing. It's doing me wonders, and it will you too. So I just want you to all know that I care about you, and I love you all, and I hope that this may be helping somebody out there. Again, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. Peace.